My parents texted me at midnight. We know you spent $520,000 to save our house, but Maya doesn't want to see you on Thanksgiving. No phone call, no explanation, just that cold sentence glowing on my loft screen. I just looked at the message, typed one single word, understood, and quietly closed the chapter on being the family doormat. And what happened next? Their perfect holiday fell apart without me. And that was only the beginning. Before I get into the full story, please like this video and comment where you're listening from. And tell me, have you ever been taken for granted by the people you love most? Your stories remind me that I'm not alone. For most of my life, being the responsible one wasn't something I chose. It was something that was quietly assigned to me. I'm Iris Bennett, 34 years old. I work in tech here in Seattle, where my days are predictable, structured, and calm. The complete opposite of my family. I grew up in a house where logic mattered less than keeping the peace. And keeping the peace almost always meant protecting my younger sister Maya from the consequences of her own actions. Maya was the favorite from the time she could string words together. Charming, magnetic, adults showered her with praise for just existing. When she wanted something, she didn't ask, she expected. And our parents always delivered. If she made mistakes, they softened the fall. If she spent too much, they covered it. If she hurt someone's feelings, they said she was just emotional. Me, meanwhile, I got used to being composed, useful, reliable. And at some point, I became the one who fixes everything. Broken appliances, broken budgets, broken promises. My name was always listed as the emergency contact. Not out of love, but because the alternative was watching everything fall apart. 6 months ago, everything really did almost collapse. My parents called in tears, their voices shaking as they finally admitted the truth. They hadn't paid the mortgage on the lake house they'd lived in for decades. They were months behind. Maya had borrowed money again. This time, she had drained their retirement fund trying to cover her impulse purchases and half-baked business ideas. Add to that their own bad financial decisions they'd tried to hide. They were weeks away from losing the house. I didn't hesitate. Period. I liquidated investments I'd built over 15 years, sold the rental property I'd poured my soul into, and shifted money meant for my future. When it was all over, I transferred them $520,000 without a single question. My lawyer insisted on drawing up a formal agreement to protect everyone, and my parents, desperate and grateful, signed every page without even blinking. For a few months, everything seemed stable again. Maya went back to her usual rhythm. Designer clothes, boastful social media updates, a new career every 2 weeks. My parents waved it off, saying she was just finding herself, the same excuse I'd heard for years. And I told myself that interfering wasn't my business anymore. Still, there were moments. Conversations I wasn't invited to, family photos without me, trips I was too busy to know about. And every time, a quiet thought would surface in the back of my mind. I paid for the roof over your heads. So why am I still the one standing outside the door? I'd push it down, telling myself I was just being paranoid. But all that composure, all that denial, crumbled that night when they sent that message. The night I was told I wasn't welcome for Thanksgiving because Maya didn't want to see me. The night everything changed. I read their message a dozen times. Not because I didn't understand, but because I couldn't believe they'd written it so casually, like asking me not to come was as easy as reminding me to bring dessert. We know you paid $520,000 to save our house. But your sister doesn't want you at Thanksgiving. No apology. No, let's talk. Just a decision made without me, about me, delivered through a glowing screen at midnight. For a minute, I sat perfectly still. I waited for the familiar wave of excuses to rise up inside me. The habit of defending them, rationalizing their behavior, making myself smaller so Maya could be comfortable. I waited for the guilt, the self-blame, the voice whispering, they didn't mean it like that. But instead, something else rose up. A quiet, dense calm, the kind that comes right before a storm. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Maya. The message was short, sharp, almost bored. Nothing personal. I just want a peaceful evening. You can be intense. Let's do lunch next week. Intense. I stared at the word until it blurred. I wasn't intense when I sold my rental property so our parents wouldn't lose their home. I wasn't intense when I covered her credit card debt without making it a public spectacle. I wasn't intense when I drove 2 hours to her in the middle of the night after another failed business venture. But now, apparently, I was intense simply because she didn't want to face the existence of the one person she couldn't manipulate. I felt something new travel up my spine. Clarity. I typed one word. Understood. No anger, no sarcasm, just finality. And for the first time in years, that word didn't sound like surrender. It sounded like a boundary clicking into place. Like choosing myself. I put my phone down and walked through my loft, feeling the cool floorboards under my feet. I opened the small safe in the corner. I almost never touched it. Inside was a simple folder, thin, but heavy with meaning. Months earlier, when I paid off their mortgage, my lawyer Stephen had insisted on a formal agreement. Not out of distrust, but for protection. My parents had been wound up, almost trembling, signing every page. They barely read it, just held my hands and repeated that I had saved them. In that folder were all the signatures, all the clauses, all the timelines. Including the one stating they had 6 months to either buy back the house at market value or start paying rent. 6 months. And Thanksgiving fell during the final week. I ran my fingers along the edge of the documents. For years, my family had counted on me never pushing back, always being reliable, forgiving, convenient. But standing there with the folder in my hands, I understood a simple thing. They had mistaken my silence for consent. And now, they were about to learn the difference. The folder felt heavier than paper should. Probably because inside that folder were all the moments of family imbalance. Every sacrifice I'd made silently. Every boundary I'd failed to set. Every apology I'd accepted when I should have walked away. I carried it to my desk and spread the pages out. They glowed softly in the warm light of my loft. For years, I'd convinced myself that if I was patient enough, reasonable enough, generous enough, things would eventually change. That one day my parents would see the difference between love and convenience. But looking at that agreement, I felt something inside me settle into place. They'd already had all the proof. They'd just chosen not to see it. I opened my laptop, the screen flooding the room with pale light, and opened a folder labeled Records. Inside were months of quiet documentation. Screenshots. Payments. Invoices. Bank statements showing transfers from my parents' accounts covering Maya's expenses. I hadn't collected them to use against anyone. I'd collected them because I was tired of being the only witness to the truth. Scrolling through the files, I felt the silence around me grow thick, almost electric. My phone vibrated on the desk, another message from Maya. I didn't pick it up. Instead, I selected Stephen's contact and pressed call. He answered on the second ring, his voice sleepy. Iris? Everything okay? No, I said calmly. But it will be. I need to start the process. A pause. Then his voice sharpened. The house? Yes. Send the notice before Thanksgiving. Another pause, longer this time, like he was trying to process whether I'd really decided to do this. Are you sure? He asked. I'm tired of being taken for granted, I answered. The words came out more steadily than I felt, but saying them, I knew they were right. Solid. Unshakable. Okay, he said. I'll have everything ready in the morning. When the call ended, I exhaled slowly. I hadn't even realized I'd been holding my breath. My loft felt different. Lighter. Even though nothing around me had changed. The change was inside. This was the moment a boundary, ignored for years, finally took shape. I walked to the window and looked out at the city, at the lights of Seattle scattered like small promises. Cars moved slowly below. People going home, completely unaware that my family, my life, had just shifted on its axis. Behind me, my phone vibrated again. This time, a message from my mom. Sweetie, don't be upset. It's just easier for your sister this way. We'll make it up to you later. Later. The word I'd heard my whole life. The word that always meant never. I closed the message without responding. Thanksgiving was just a few days away. Maya was planning her perfect evening, the one where she'd be the hostess, basking in attention, pretending the world revolved around her. Our parents would orbit around her like always, smoothing edges, protecting her image, ignoring the cracks. But not this time. This time, consequences would knock on their door. Not in anger, but in legal form, bearing their own signatures. They'd receive it exactly when they least expected it. Quietly. Cleanly. Inevitably. Thanksgiving morning arrived under a blanket of cold Seattle fog, so thick it felt like the lake was breathing. But in my parents' house, there was no trace of calm. Maya had been up since dawn, perfecting the holiday she hoped would impress her colleagues. She'd invited people she wanted to convince that she was more successful, more stable, more established than she really was. She wore a cream dress, her hair styled in soft waves framing a carefully curated smile. She darted around the kitchen, issuing directions, checking the table setting, adjusting silverware my mother had laid out wrong, reminding my father to act natural when the guests arrived. Our parents hovered around her, half tired, half proud, completely unaware of what was already on its way to their door. They didn't know the delivery was scheduled. Not food, not decorations, not flowers. Something else. They also didn't know I wasn't at home sulking or licking my wounds. I was exactly where I needed to be, in a quiet, secluded place, far enough away to hear my own thoughts without the weight of their expectations. I glanced at my watch. 11:42 a.m. Right on schedule. Meanwhile, at the lake house, Maya's colleagues began to arrive. A couple from her firm, including her direct supervisor. They entered, admiring the decor that Maya credited entirely to herself. She glowed from the praise, absorbing every drop of recognition. My mother quietly whispered to one of the guests, almost apologetically, "Our older daughter isn't coming today. She needs some space." The same tone she used when Maya made mistakes, soft, protective, bending the truth so it wouldn't hurt anyone. Then the doorbell rang. A normal sound. But it split the holiday in two. "Mom, get that," Maya said, adjusting her dress. Probably the last dessert delivery. But it wasn't dessert. On the doorstep stood a man in a simple jacket, holding a sealed envelope and a flat folder. "I have documents for Adam and Elaine Bennett," he said politely. My mother blinked, confused. "Oh, probably something we forgot to order." He placed the envelope in her hands, asked for a signature, and left without another word. No drama. No raised voices. Just a quiet delivery of consequences. My father stepped closer, his eyebrows drawing together as he saw the legal letterhead on the first page. This is from Stephen, Iris's lawyer." The room went quiet. Not because anyone understood yet, but because everyone recognized the name. "Open it," Maya said lightly, still half smiling. "Maybe it's nothing?" But when the envelope was opened, her smile faltered. Inside were 3 sets of documents. An official reminder of the agreement. A notice of the end of the 6-month grace period. And a summary of all payments, invoices, and transfers that had pulled them out of financial disaster, all traceable to one source. Me. My mother's hands trembled as she unfolded the pages. "Rent," she whispered. "At market value." Immediately. My father scanned the text, his face paling. "Or we have to buy the house back." "Elaine, this isn't negotiable. We agreed to this ourselves." Maya stepped forward, snatching the page from his hands. "What rent? This is our house." "No," my father answered quietly. "It hasn't been for 6 months. The house belongs to Iris." Those words hit the room like a physical force. Even Maya's supervisor looked stunned. "She wouldn't actually. I mean, she wouldn't enforce this, right?" My mother breathed, panic threading her voice. "She's just hurt." But then she reached the last page. The one with the deadline. Thanksgiving Day was the cutoff. Not next week. Not next month. Today. And just as the panic was settling in, Maya noticed something else. A signature at the bottom of the agreement. Hers. "What is this?" she exclaimed. "Why is my signature here? I didn't sign anything." "Yes, you did," my father said sharply. His voice, for the first time in years, cracked. "You signed as a witness the day Iris paid off the mortgage. You were sitting right there. You said you'd read it all later." Maya's face went white. Her supervisor adjusted his glasses and started reading the document much more carefully. He spoke slowly. You said your family's finances were stable, that you were helping your parents through a temporary difficulty. I am helping, Maya stammered. This is a misunderstanding. But he was barely looking at her. His gaze was fixed on the packet of evidence. Transfers. Withdrawals. Payments covering Maya's designer purchases and failed projects. What she'd called her personal savings. Everything was unraveling too fast for her to fix. My mother turned desperately to my father. Call her. Call Iris. Right now. They tried. The phone rang once. Twice. 3 times. I watched silently from where I sat, screen down, not even reaching for it. Then my father tried. Then my mother. Then Maya, her fingers shaking as she dialed. When the call stopped, I had over 30 missed notifications. I finally answered. Hello. My voice was calm. Too calm. Iris, my father breathed. We received something. You didn't have to, not today. Not like this. You told me not to come, I said simply. I respected that. My mother jumped in immediately, her voice breaking. Honey, please. This is a misunderstanding. Maya didn't mean. I read it all. Maya grabbed the phone. What you're doing is insane. You're ruining Thanksgiving. You're destroying my reputation in front of my colleagues. There it was. Not regret. Not an apology. Shame. This isn't about your reputation, I said. It's about accountability. Accountability, she cried. You're punishing us? No, I answered. You punished yourselves. I'm just enforcing what we all agreed to. For a moment, no one spoke. I could hear dishes clinking in the background, feel the quiet wave of shock moving through the room, the realization that the woman they'd always used had stopped playing her assigned role. My father finally exhaled, a sound like surrender. What are we supposed to do now? You have 2 options, I said evenly. Buy the house back or start paying rent. That's impossible, Maya whispered. You know we can't afford either. You could have, I replied, if you hadn't drained their accounts, taken out loans in their names, and called your spending investments. Her supervisor's eyes widened. He'd seen the evidence too. Maya's voice wavered. You're doing this on purpose. You want to humiliate me. No, I said quietly. But I'm done protecting you from the truth. I let the words settle and continued. This Thanksgiving was supposed to be perfect for you. And now you're facing everything you've worked so hard to hide. That's what happens when real consequences show up. I felt all 3 of them hold their breath. Then I finished with the same calm I'd found in myself that night I read their message. I'm done being someone people can use. And before anyone could respond, I hung up. On the other side of the lake, in the house that now legally belonged to me, the facade of the perfect family gathering had crumbled. Not because I'd fought back, but because for the first time, I'd stopped carrying the weight of their choices. In the days that followed, something happened in my family that I'd never seen before. Silence. Not the cold, punishing silence Maya used to get attention, but the silence of people finally forced to face the truth. Thanksgiving ended in fragments. Maya's colleagues left early, saying polite goodbyes, but not hiding their discomfort. Her supervisor barely made eye contact as he walked out. The packet of evidence was still fresh in his mind. Whatever image Maya had tried to create, it had shattered the moment those documents hit the table. My parents called again. This time not with pleas, but with questions they should have asked years ago. They started sorting through their finances and, for the first time, saw how deeply Maya's spending had undermined their stability. Shock turned to shame, and shame turned into something quieter, heavier. Responsibility. For the first time, they couldn't ignore the pattern. For the first time, they couldn't pretend it was all harmless. And for the first time, they didn't ask me to fix it. That week, I walked a lot through Seattle, breathing air that felt cleaner than anything I'd tasted in years. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't even feel relief. What I felt was closer to balance. Like the world had finally stopped tilting toward everyone else's needs. A week later, my father asked to meet. No excuses. No blame. Just honesty. He admitted they'd been blind, that leaning on me had become too comfortable, too easy. My mother apologized, not trying to frame it as an act of love or sacrifice, but simply acknowledging they'd failed to protect me while protecting Maya. They still didn't know what would happen with the house. Neither did I. But for the first time, that uncertainty wasn't my burden to carry. For the first time in my entire adult life, each of them was finally living inside the consequences they'd created. When my parents asked to meet again a week later, something new was in their voices. Quieter. Softer. More human than I'd heard in years. They weren't begging or trying to bargain. They were simply acknowledging the truth. They had taken my devotion for granted, and now they were ready to rebuild, without shifting the weight onto my shoulders. As for Maya, her silence said more than any apology speech could have. For the first time, questions were being directed at her, and she couldn't hide behind charm or excuses. And standing there, listening to my family speak honestly for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Real peace.